Thanks for joining me as I continue to speak with people from around the world who use comedy to help and inspire those around them. Mr. VIKESH Anand uses stand-up comedy to advocate for individuals who stutter. VIKESH, so nice to have you here, all the way from Australia.
Thank you, and thanks for having me, Jared. I'm super excited to be having this chat. And as I mentioned to you previously, thanks for your interest in stuttering. I'm a big fan of public awareness about this thing that we call stuttering. So thanks for the opportunity.
What was your experience growing up with stuttering, if you don't mind taking us through your journey?
I didn't become aware personally that I spoke differently or that I had a stutter until around grade 7. On the first day of school, I realized my words come out differently than others. And unfortunately, that self-awareness caused me to change the way I interacted, or let's put it honestly, didn't interact in class any further, right? So prior to grade 7, from what I remember, it wasn't a thing, and I wasn't aware that I had a stutter, and so I just kept raising my hand and participating with disfluencies and everything. At the moment of grade 7, I then said, oh, I can't do this. I don't want to raise my hand. I don't want to speak for fear of having the block. I don't want to speak for fear of judgment from my classmates, from the teacher. And I don't want to speak because of fear of laughter as well. I remember around that same time going to see a speech therapist, and I grew up in Jersey, New Jersey, and so I went to see a speech therapist, and the speech therapist gave me a paper and a tape recorder. So for your listeners, a tape recorder is an iPhone without the iPhone part, so it just records. So they may not know what that is, but so a tape recorder, and she said, go home and record yourself. Well, I went home, and a little known secret, and most people, and I'll always say most, because there is the only thing that's 100% about people who stutter is that we are inconsistent. So that's the only thing. Otherwise, it's most, right? Or some. But so most people who stutter, we don't stutter when we talk alone. I went home, recorded the words completely fluently, went back the next day, and the speech pathologist said, you sound fine. And I said, you don't really understand stuttering. And I never went back.
So you're saying that someone with a stutter, if they are talking to themselves alone, that you won't experience that?
Correct. Most people who stutter won't have this fluency or stutter. And it's not even just talking alone. It's talking to, for example, a pet. So it seems to be where there's no opportunities for feedback, basically, right? There's no opportunities for judgment. And so that perhaps relieves some sort of pressure subconsciously, because consciously I don't really have that, but you know what I mean? So yeah, and again, I have met people who stutter who do stutter when they're alone. So it's not across the board, but the majority of people that I have met don't do that.
Do you find there's a particular reasoning for that? You said like maybe there's a fear of judgment. Is it societal related? Is it something with like social anxiety related? Or are there certain triggers for a stutter?
A certain percentage of people who stutter may have social anxiety in addition to their stutter. So I'll say that again. A certain percentage of people who stutter may have social anxiety, right? So that could be the reason for that, for the hesitation. But stuttering itself, there is no known reason. There's no one knows how it actually starts. So no one knows how it begins, except that it's something to do with the wiring in our brains. And so, I mean, I'm at a point in my life where I have zero fear, zero anxiety. I'm talking to you. I'm still experiencing disfluencies, but I don't have any anxiety as I'm doing that. It's just the way that I talk. Things like social anxiety, things like stressful situations such as a job interview, having to give a speech at a wedding. Those things can certainly increase the level of disfluencies and increase the stuttering, but I want to be clear that those aren't the cause.
Right. Okay.
And because some people think, oh yeah, calm down. 2 words I heard a lot growing up in Jersey: calm down, slow down. Right? You must be anxious, so if you calm down, the stuttering will go away. And slow down, you're talking too fast. And as you know, we do talk fast in Jersey. And so I grew up believing that, right? I grew up believing, okay, it's not stuttering, it's this other thing, right? It's this, yes, I must be anxious, I must talk fast. And so when I went from that schooling, from being really overt and really struggling with getting the words out, when I went to university, I became covert. And what that means is I was able to switch my words around on the fly. And while it allowed me to be more social, it was mentally exhausting because I was trying to pull myself off as a fluent person every day.
So you would change the way that you speak so that it flowed a different way? Is that what you mean by being covert?
I try to avoid blocks. So for example, if I was about to tell you a story about being on my bike and I knew that I was going to stutter on B, I would just say, oh, I was out for a ride. I was out on my trek. I would change the word. I would avoid the word, that B sound, because if I knew that I would stutter on B and I was afraid to stutter in public, then I would basically change the words. And it takes a level of skill to be able to get to that point, but it's also mentally exhausting because you're scanning your words in advance in real time, 24/7. There are certain sounds for most people who stutter that will trigger disfluencies. The thing is, those sounds change over time, right? So it's not always B's for the rest of your life, right? And funny enough, for me, it would be the sounds that I would avoid the most. There's a few different types of moments of stuttering, let's call them, right? So one is the so like the bouncy sort of block. One is the so I slide into the word, and the other is what's called a silent block. So a number like 8, I would just be like 8, just trying to force it out. And so there's no bouncing or sliding on that particular, and it's with the vowels for the most part, I think. But and so those are 3 types of let's say types of blocks or moments of stuttering.
What are the kind of, if you don't mind taking us through, what are the do's and don'ts of ways that people have reacted that are not a great appropriate way to react to someone who is stuttering, and some of the more acceptable ways?
I'll probably give you, I always like top 3 or top something, right? So I'll give you like the top 3 things, top 3 tips that your listeners and viewers can do if they encounter a person who stutters. So 1, maintain eye contact. Number 2, and while I appreciate the intent behind this, please don't finish our sentences, which leads me to number 3, just wait for us to finish.
You venture into stand-up comedy, the world of stand-up comedy, which is you have to be brave enough to go into that. And now you're going into it and implementing your experiences with a stutter and advocating for the community of individuals who stutter with stand-up comedy, which is unbelievable and so inspiring. What even interested you in getting started in the first place?
I was at it was actually an Australian Speakeasy Association stuttering conference back in 2018 in Perth, which is in Western Australia. So kind of like the West Coast of Australia. So, and I was at a conference, and one of the speakers, who is also a person who stutters, was speaking about, he had just done a stand-up comedy course. And as soon as he said that, I felt butterflies. I don't feel a lot of butterflies. I've done Toastmasters for years. I've done public speaking. I don't have a lot of fear of speaking situations. And when it triggered the butterflies, I became interested.
I recently went to a 3-day stuttering conference, but it wasn't supposed to go for 3 days. If you catch my drift. So.
I start off every show with a little bit of stuttering awareness because I can. And so I generally start off. I have two sorts of intros, but one of the intros is, someone will say, and here's Vikesh. I said, thanks for introducing me. So yes, so my name is Vikesh, but sometimes it comes out as Vikesh. So no, I don't sometimes forget my name, but I do have a stutter. So stuttering doesn't mean that I'm nervous or any less intelligent. It does mean you're going to be here for a while. And so I incorporate, that's my little bit of stuttering advocacy and education, because I still want them to know, don't just assume that that's what it means. And if that helps someone in the future, then it's all worth it. And then I could continue on with just some personal stories of my life that I have.
What have been the audience reactions? Like, during the shows and even after the show, do people say anything and come up to you after shows? And
yeah, look, during the show they laugh, so that's always good.
That's a good sign. Good. Yeah.
After the show, no, I've gotten some great feedback. The feedback in general doesn't even focus on my speech, and that's what I want, right? I want to normalize this way of speaking as it's just another accent, right? I already have an American and Canadian accent, and I live in Australia, so just consider stuttering part of that accent. And some people might say, "Oh, I didn't hear you stutter that much." I'm like, "Oh yeah, thanks," but I mean that's not it's fine, but as long as I made you laugh, then I care more about that feedback than did I stutter or didn't I stutter. I don't really care if I stuttered or I didn't stutter. I just cared if I made you laugh. One of the feelings that I didn't expect from a stuttering perspective is I didn't expect a feeling of empowerment. Because here I was, I grew up being laughed at. And now here I was making people laugh sort of on command, right? I've got the punchlines, right? I've got the punchlines in my pocket. They're not going to laugh until I say the punchline. And that was really interesting.
You said it's empowering. It's great to make people laugh, of course. Are there other ways that it's like helped you feel more comfortable, or just like other ways that it's changed you in positive ways?
Look, I think hearing the feedback has just continued to build my confidence even more, right? I just continued to sort of internally justify that what I'm doing is the right way for me. And honestly, I hope all of my materials and stuff are all clean and family friendly, because I really hope that I can inspire someone else, including the youth, to say, "Oh, this guy who has a stutter is doing stand-up comedy." Because I'm sure, and as the youth myself, I would have never thought me with a stutter doing stand-up, right? But and I hope it sends a message that it's never too late.
Now you're also, that wasn't enough, you're also the national president of the Australian Speakeasy Association. For anyone not familiar with that association, what is the mission of the Australian Speakeasy Association?
Sure, thanks. And I will add that the national presidency is a volunteer-based role, as is the entire organization. So the Australian Speakeasy Association, look, we are, in terms of our tagline, Australia's peak body supporting people who stutter, and we are a support and advocacy organization for people who stutter. So we've got local support groups, both depending on the city and the status, in person or virtual. And we have a couple of different types of support groups. One are for people who have done the smooth speech therapy program here in Australia. So that's a prevalent type of therapy program. I'm one of the only national presidents, well, one of the few that hasn't done smooth speech. So it just shows the expansion and openness of the organization. So those support groups continue to exist to allow the people who have done that to continue to practice on a regular basis. The other ones that I run, which are called Speak Freely virtual meetups, and Speak Freely implies basically, if you're a person who stutters, if you're a speech pathologist, you're a speech pathology student, you have an interest in stuttering, you're free to join and speak with whatever technique you want or don't want to use. And it's basically, it's a community. And then the advocacy side, doing things around International Stuttering Awareness Day, which is in October, but also trying to advocate in general with awareness opportunities. I recently had an opportunity with Brisbane City Council, so which is I just think more needs to be done in the employer space, and so there's an opportunity. Brisbane City Council is one of the largest city council employers in the Southern Hemisphere with 7,000 staff, and so I had half an hour with their entire recruitment team of 20 people, and I spoke to them about stuttering. And the feedback I received was amazing, in that they learned so much, and they have a video interview as part of their interview process now. So they allowed me to sample that before I had the chat with them, and I said, "Hey, that's great, but if you notice, I had some disfluencies. 2 minutes wasn't enough for some of my questions." So what they've done is, if you, again, this is where it's on us, if you indicate that you have a communication, I don't know what the exact wording they're using is, it could be communication disability, or if you can indicate on the application that you have such an issue like stuttering, they will double the amount of time in the video interview for you. And that to me, that's we need to be able to accommodate and assist. It shouldn't just be a no. If the CV was good enough to get you in the door for a job interview, the way the words come out shouldn't automatically exclude you. And so advocacy is another opportunity there with the employer space here in Australia.
Vikesh, thank you so much for really sharing your experiences, telling your story, advocating, and making people laugh. Like, who could ask for more than that? Like this video? Be sure to subscribe.